Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Stronger Marriage Podcast. Glad you joined us today.
Hey, guys.
Welcome to the Stronger Marriage Podcast with Trey and Lee. On this podcast, you'll hear real topics about real life. They cover everything from married sex to raising kids to loving your spouse so much that you're willing to forgive them for occasionally being the most annoying person in the world. Trey and Lee have raised 4 boys, been married over 30 years, and somehow still really like each other. And now, live from the metropolis of Childress, Texas, a place so flat you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. Here are your hosts for the Stronger Marriage Podcast, Trey and Lee Morgan.
Glad y'all joined us today.
I still haven't gotten tired of that intro yet.
I don't know.
We have mixed reviews. Sometimes I hear people that go, yeah, the intro's a little much, and then I have other people go, that's my favorite part. So I don't know what to think about it, but we're glad you joined us today.
Yes, we are. We are glad you joined us here in very, very cold, frozen Childress, Texas today.
Everything's shut down. School's closed. Our church service canceled tonight. It is cold. It is icy. We're staying in.
Yeah. Strange forecast for us. We don't usually have below freezing temps for this many days in a row. Our forecast is like 9 days that we're not going to get above freezing, with the exception of about 4 hours tomorrow. We're going to get just barely above freezing. And other than that, we're staying in freezing temps, which is really odd for us.
Yeah. My favorite part of winter at this time of year in February is when it's over.
Yes.
I'm ready for some sunshine. I'm ready for some warm, not summer, not hot. I know we're picky, right? Just in between. Give us some spring.
We gripe at the extremes.
Yeah, the extremes get old.
Yeah.
They do. Hey, can I read a review real quick we got from a nice person this week? I
Read
thought
it
it
to
was,
me.
here's the person's name, Cleaning Woman.
There
all right?
you go.
We got a review from Cleaning Woman.
I
We don't know if that's her job or maybe she's a stay-at-home mom and she just feels like she cleans all the time.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, she says, I love listening to Trey and Lee. I love to hear them talk about their kids. I feel like I'm sitting in their living room listening to them when I listen to the podcast. Thank you for your heartfelt podcast. We always appreciate the reviews that we get and the thumbs up, and that helps when you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us get our stuff out. We're just trying to promote healthy marriage, and you leaving a review helps us do that.
That's awesome, and that's kind of what we want you to feel like, is that you're sitting here in the living room with us. Or at our kitchen table is where we generally are. And we've having a cup of coffee with us.
We've said this before. We don't do retakes. We don't do edits. If our dog barks, the dog barks. If the doorbell rings, we're going to have to just put you on pause.
What you hear is what you get.
We just kind of make it raw, and to us, that's kind of fun. That's the way we want to do it. So we're talking this week about reasons for a sexless marriage. And that's kind of a tough topic. We're right here at Valentine's time, and we talked about romance last week. And for a lot of marriages, romance doesn't come easy.
That's right. It doesn't come easy, and for some marriages, it doesn't even exist, sadly.
Yeah, so. and that's kind of hard. And sometimes those are reasons where a husband and wife might mutually agree that that's okay with them. Yeah. But if it's a marriage where one spouse needs romance and the other one's not interested, then there's going to be some issues that need to be worked on. And there's the phone.
And there's the phone.
But that's, so that's kind of how we're looking at some things and talking about some stuff. And there's some statistics out there that talk about a sexless marriage. An actual sexless marriage doesn't mean you don't ever have sex. It actually, according to most studies, a sexless marriage is if you have sex less than 4 times a year.
Yeah.
You're considered in a sexless marriage.
So this first statistic here that you have down is 19% of marriages were in what could be considered a sexless relationship. They reported having had sex once or twice or not at all in the last year.
Which is to some that might be normal, to some that might be okay, and to some that might be I'm frustrated. And we're going to talk to some of the frustrated people today, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons for a sexless marriage and maybe some of the answers to that.
That's right. And I feel like just based off of comments that we get on some of our Instagram posts that we have, that usually there is one person in the marriage that's very frustrated. It's usually not a mutual agreement to be in this kind of relationship. Usually there's one partner that's very frustrated and doesn't understand.
Yes. So. And we've said this before, and this is a good place to say it. The frequency of sex in marriage really should not be set by the person, the man or the woman with the lowest sex drive. It really ought to be a mutual thing that they agree on, both a husband and a wife, kind of meet in the middle somewhere.
Exactly. Compromise. Marriage is all about compromise.
It's exactly right. And while communication is important, affection is important, sex is important, all these things are very important to a marriage. And if you need one of those things, whether that's praise, communication, affection, or sex, and your spouse isn't giving it, it is going to make cause for some serious frustrations in marriage.
That's exactly right. So the first thing you need to do is to determine whether or not this bothers you.
As a couple.
If you feel like you are in a sexless marriage, figure out, am I okay with this? Or does this bother me? Don't base your marriage off of what you read the norm should be, or listening to other couples' stories or whatever. You just figure out what's good for you.
Make your own normal.
That's right. But this needs to be, like we said, it needs to be mutual. So if your spouse thinks, hey, this is fine, but you don't, then there needs to be some compromise going on there.
Yeah, there does. And if you're okay with 3 times a week or 3 times a month or 3 times a year as a couple, then that's great. But if your spouse is going, hey, I'm very frustrated and I would love for us to be more sexually active as a couple, then this is something that needs to be discussed, needs to be talked about. And so let's talk for a second about some stages of marriage, if we can. Mm-hmm. We had a question that came through Instagram this week with a group that ladies that were actually studying this topic, and they said, kind of, what are the stages? And I told them we were going to address this a little bit. Kind of what can you expect at the newlywed stage, at the young children stage, at the teen stage, at the empty nest stage? What are some pros and cons? What are some good things, some bad things, and kind of what can you expect? What would you say about the newlywed stage, maybe in your in the intimacy and sexual activity of a newlywed couple?
Well, I think the newlywed stage can be both awesome and frustrating at the same time.
Good point.
Awesome because it's just the two of you. And you have no distractions as far as, having children or that kind of thing. Frustrating in the fact that if you've gone into marriage doing things God's way and you've waited to have sex, you may not have a lot of experience, and you go into this thinking this is going to be wow, and it isn't always wow when you're newlyweds, because we've said before, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
And you get better at it over time. And so it can be also very frustrating for newlyweds.
Yes. Good point. And experience helps. And teaching, learning. We're going to talk a little bit about communication. Educating yourself. There are a lot of great books on healthy marriage.
There are
sex.
some good Christian authors out there, and we've always recommended Sheet Music by Dr. Kevin Lehman. There's some others out there that...
is it Sweet?
Wheat.
Dr. Wheat.
Ed Wheat.
Yeah, Dr. Ed Wheat. Good call on that. And it's called Intended for Pleasure.
Yeah, that one's a little older, but still very, very good.
Mm-hmm. It is. Don't leave that laying around if you got kids in the house, all right?
That's right.
But it is a good book. But newlyweds, you can look at it from that point. Either way, that ought to be a time in which you don't have distractions, and maybe being new, you're this is fun. Let's do this a lot. Mm-hmm. When small children come in, things can get a little bit tougher.
Very tough, especially when you have a baby in the house that's not sleeping. I think that it could probably be almost non-existent for a little while, and you probably have to work extra hard at finding time.
Yes.
And energy.
Can you find time, or is it going to be a thing where you make time?
I think make time.
Yeah, and I think so too, and that is tough. And if you have multiple kids, That is really, really tough. And you're going to have to look for times in which your kids are asleep, and you may be going, well, they may not sleep more than, they may have, if you got a little one, they may have gone down for a nap and they're not going to sleep more, but you don't know that. You've got to take advantage of that time. And if you're trying to put them in bed at night, try to get them down. You may be thinking, but they may pop up for a drink in a little while. You can't think about that. You've got to just say, hey, both kids are down, and we have got to have some time together, and you go to the bedroom and lock the door.
Yes. And we've talked about scheduling sex before, and a lot of people think, well, that just takes all of the spontaneity and romance out of it. If that's the only way you can manage to get it done, then you schedule it and you say, whatever, Tuesdays and Thursday nights, we're going to work extra hard to get the kids in bed early. We're going to get, all of the distractions out of the way, and we're just going to, make sure we know that's, those are our nights or whatever. So you do what works for you, but scheduling when you have children is usually the only way it happens.
That's exactly right. And that is a lot of people will just go, oh, I just hate that idea because it's not spontaneous. Let me just say, scheduled sex is better than no sex. And if you're waiting for spontaneous, you may be waiting a long time.
That's right.
So don't think that. What about teens? What if you got teens in your house?
Teens, this can be a challenge just because teens, you can't put them to bed early. They kind of have their own sleep schedule, and it's usually they stay up way past mom and dad.
We always like to joke that we used to yawn real big and 9:30 and go, we're really tired and we're going to bed. You guys turn out the lights and lock the doors, and we'll see y'all tomorrow. And we'd lock the bedroom door when we went to the bedroom.
Yeah.
And so
and take advantage of times when they go over to a friend's house, or while they're at school and you've got a long lunch break, whatever. I mean, use your imagination sometimes. You just got to do what works.
Yeah. Empty nest?
Empty nest is pretty great because there again, it's like the newlywed stage and you don't have the distraction of the children.
And you don't have the inexperience.
And that's right. I mean, it
can be as good as you want to make it.
Yes.
Yeah, it can be as good as you want to make it. So those are kind of some stages in there of different things. And maybe the empty nest stage is you're kind of looking to reconnect after you've had kids in the house and so this can be a very, very good thing for you. But look forward to that. Tell your spouse if you're getting ready to be empty nesters and you're worried about that. Hey, I'm looking forward to having more time with you, with just us. And so look forward to opportunities for that. So sex is good for marriage. God created it that way. God created sex for pleasure, for procreation, for comfort, for oneness. It is the intimacy that brings two people into one flesh. And it's an important part of marriage that God designed as a gift for marriage. And so don't underestimate the value of it reconnecting you as a couple. Don't take it lightly. It is a very healthy thing for your marriage. And so as we begin to look at some things, we want you to understand as we talk about sexless marriage that maybe something that's missing in your marriage is that, and you just need to figure out what it is and why it is that things aren't working really well.
So another statistic to throw out here to you is that in 70 to 75% of marriages, men have the higher sex drive. So that also means that in 25 to 30% of marriages, women have the higher sex drive. So
it's not always a man thing.
So don't miss that.
Yeah.
We kind of live in a society where we think that's all men want, that's all men talk about, that's all they need. But that's not the case for everyone, for every marriage.
That's exactly right. Sometimes women have the higher sex drive, and there's all those crazy sayings or studies about men and how often they think of sex. It used to be every 7 seconds men think of sex, and I don't. Have you heard that? I don't know. Who walks around going, all right, let me know.
7 seconds.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll just tell you, when you get to be my age, it's not 7 seconds.
That's right.
It's more like 15.
Oh, gosh. You really extended it out
That's
there.
it. Yeah, it's like doubled now. It's like every 15 seconds.
Oh, my goodness.
Sorry, drop that one on
yeah. But, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the comments that we get on our Instagram, I feel like they come from women who are saying,
yes, they're frustrated.
my husband is not interested. My husband doesn't care if I wear lingerie. My husband just has no desire. And I mean, that's going directly against that statistic that men have the higher sex drive. So there's got to be some reasons there, and that's what we're going to get to, is some of the reasons why your husband or your wife may have no interest.
All right, so here's 10 things. We'll go through them pretty quick because they're pretty. We'll go through them and then give some reasons what you can do to help fix those. But number one of 10 reasons that you may be in a sexless marriage is you're just too busy and too tired. Mm-hmm. Sexless marriage is caused oftentimes by, the kids have 42 places that they've got to be, and I've got to drive them, and I'm a PTA mom, and I'm the Little League coach, and as you say in the workshops, you're dropping in bed at night absolutely exhausted with no energy for your spouse.
That's right. Dr. Lehman says that this is the number one enemy of sex for women, is this busyness and weariness. And it's true. And we can't just, like men, most men could just, whatever is going on, there could be 4 kids running around the house, chasing each other with sticks, and he could go off to the bedroom and lock the door and be, totally fine. And the wife would just be going, are you nuts? There's no way I can focus on that. So it's really important for women that all the distractions be out of the way. All the chores need to be done. All the kids need to be taken care of. And that makes you tired. It just does. It makes you tired.
Yeah, and so husbands, you may be trying to understand, that may not make a lot of sense to you, but you may be required to get in there and go, let me help get the kids started on homework, or get them in the bath, right, or get the kitchen dishes done, or whatever it is, to kick in and kind of help to remove some of that stress from your spouse. But we talked about it earlier. If you're constantly too tired or too busy, consider scheduling sex and just saying, hey, Thursday nights and Tuesday nights, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Work to slow down. What's on your schedule that you can clear up, and you're going to have to make that a priority. And don't assume that your spouse doesn't want you. Maybe your spouse isn't real good at initiating sex, and we think this is important that both husband and wife initiate. And if you're the person with a higher sex drive, you may be going, I'm ready anytime. But they may not know that. You may need to drop some hints in there and say some things to get them to understand that, hey, tonight might be a really good night.
That's right. And I don't want to skip ahead because I feel like you're going to talk about that later.
Well, even if we do, you talk about it, but don't be too busy and too tired. That is one of the reasons that sexless marriages happen out there, is because we're tired. But yeah, no, I don't. There's not anything in here about initiating down the line, and so. Let's talk about the second thing, resentment. Hard to have a good sex life without pursuing a good marriage. And if there's some resentment in your marriage for something that's happened, you may need to acknowledge that. Maybe you need to let your spouse know and you work through it. Maybe some counseling, maybe some just discussing some things. But it is going to be important that you and your spouse work through some resentment if there's some things in the past where you have been hurt one way or another.
Yeah, and it could even boil down to you're having some financial stresses, just whatever area of your marriage that you're struggling is going to affect your intimacy.
Gotcha. A third reason is infidelity, and that is huge. And if you are in a marriage where trust has been broken and there has been an affair of some kind, whether it's emotional, whether it is physical, then yeah, it's going to be hard for your spouse to be excited about intimacy for a while, and you're going to have to be patient with that. You're going to have to work through that, and that is going to be maybe a long, hard road ahead of you. But communication, we've done 2 podcasts on this, how to rebuild trust after an affair. And if you don't know how to find those, if you'll email us, we'll point you in the right direction, but that will help. But infidelity is one of those things that's going to cause a sexless marriage.
Too much criticism from either partner. I mean, if your spouse is constantly criticizing you, talking down to you, whatever it is, man, that kills the desire right there. So.
Yeah. If you're talking down to your spouse and being rude to your spouse and treating your spouse like one of the kids, or just being angry with your spouse all the time, don't be surprised if they don't want to have sex with you. Mm-hmm. That is just common sense right there.
Yeah, and I hate to pick on the women, but I'm just going to say, if you're constantly maybe picking at your spouse or nagging at your husband to do this or that or whatever, don't be surprised that he doesn't have any interest.
Yeah, and that goes true for the guys.
And it does.
As
It
well.
works. It works that way for both ways. I'm just
It sure does.
kind of basing that off of comments that we get.
That's true. Another reason, number 5, is bad technique, meaning maybe you just need to quit worrying about getting yourself pleased and make it fun for your partner as well. Figure out, as we'll talk about it in a minute, communication is going to be a key here. You've got to get past the point of being unwilling to communicate. Lee and I both grew up in a home that we didn't talk about sex a lot, and so it was not a real comfortable thing for us to talk about for a long time, and then we got a little bit more comfortable with it. God's not embarrassed by it, and so it's okay with you and your spouse to talk about it. Mm-hmm. What works, what doesn't work, what you like, what you don't like. We're still asking one another questions all the time, and that's healthy. It's really, really hard to share, for your spouse to meet your needs sexually if they don't know what those are.
Yeah, you can't read each other's minds.
That's exactly right. Give us number 6.
Porn addiction is very, very hard on intimacy.
Yeah, and that's huge. And this is, you would think, now what we're talking about here, you would think if your spouse is using porn, and you'd go, yes, I don't want to have sex with them. But we're talking people who are addicted to porn find themselves not turned on by their spouse anymore, meaning they're more addicted to porn. They pursue porn over their spouse. We need at some point to do a podcast on pornography at somewhere down the line, but to talk about how unrealistic it is. There's no intimacy involved, and it rewires your brain from what we've read and we understand. And if you've got a desire for porn, and you're not got a desire for your spouse, then something's way off on that. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the many reasons that porn is a problem in no-sex marriages, is because you see something on there and you go, how come my spouse doesn't do that? Or what could I do to make, my spouse doesn't look like this? And you can't get turned on without that visual stimulation.
Mm-hmm. And there is help out there, though. I mean, there are a lot of people that have recovered from porn addictions, and I think it takes, some special help and counseling, and
takes more than just going.
You have to rewire that brain back the way it was.
It takes a whole lot more than just going, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So let's talk about lack of communication, another reason for a sexless marriage.
Did you cover?
I did not, but we'll get that one in a minute. How's that?
Lack of communication.
Yeah, lack of communication. So we kind of talked about it, but best thing you can do is communicate it. If you're uncomfortable communicating, maybe you could text things to your spouse. Get a book and read it together, and then ask questions. And maybe you need to, I've done that before. There have been times in our past where I'd read something and I go, is that true? With your body and all this kind of stuff. And you'd go, yeah. And I go, man, I didn't have a clue. So communicate about stuff. Learn to ask what you want. Communication is huge in helping overcome a sexless marriage.
Flirting is pretty great, and it kind of fits under here.
Yeah, because it's a form of communication, and if you can flirt with your spouse, that's just really healthy. Yeah. Flirty text messages, just touching one another. Anything you can do to flirt with your spouse it's a healthy thing.
We always say, or you always say, don't drop hints, because especially men, they can't read your mind, women. But flirting is kind of a way that you can drop a hint that they're going to pick up on, usually. Yeah. If you're flirting, they know what that means.
Yeah, that is right. We missed one. You mentioned it a while ago. Health issues. Some people have health issues. There are birth control pills that can cause a drop in sex life, a sexual drive. There are meds for high blood pressure with men and women, cholesterol meds. There's a lot of health issues that may be causing erectile dysfunction, things along those lines, and you may need to see a doctor.
That's right. This could also go along with some mental health issues, and I think you mentioned that earlier. If you've got some things in your past that you've been hurt by, you might need to work through some things before you're able to be fully intimate with your spouse, and so that's okay. Don't be afraid to see a counselor or a doctor about any of these things. And I think it's interesting that you brought up the birth control. You had a conversation about somebody about this, or she kind of gave a lot of the medical
amazing
stuff behind this, and I'd never really, I just don't think I ever even knew it. But yeah, birth control pills can really affect your
they tell your body to don't ovulate. They
Yeah.
tell your body, God fixes your body. We're not against birth control, understand that, and being cautious about that. What we are saying is that God created your body to go, I feel the need to reproduce. I feel once a month or sometime in here that I need my spouse. We need to connect. And birth control helps block that. And so, that if you have zero desire sexually for your spouse, you really ought to talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
Maybe consider going a different direction with birth control or something.
Yeah, there may be lower dosages. There may be some different things you can try in the way of birth control. Libido, is that the word I was looking for? I just could not bring that up. That birth control affects your libido.
Libido, that's an interesting word. All right, let's look at these last two. And
Here we go.
I knew we were
going to get back around.
You're right. There you go. That's the word you were looking for. Yes, ma'am.
No, that's what we were talking about earlier.
Oh, I gotcha. One spouse unwilling to initiate. We kind of jumped on that a little bit earlier, or gave some hints toward it. But if one spouse feels like they're doing all the begging, that's after a while they're just going to give up and quit.
Yeah, nobody wants to beg, and a lot of times, I don't know. This is another thing that in that book, Sheet Music, Dr. Kevin Lehman says that this is the main enemy of sex for men, is that they don't want to feel like they're begging for sex. And if they really want to feel wanted and desired by their women, and if they don't, then they just kind of lose interest. And so there you go. If women, if you're not letting your man know how sexy he is, or that you want him, that you need him, then
it's important.
It's a turn off. Yeah,
it is. It's really important to a man. And there's, I will tell you, I'm going to speak for, I can't speak for all men, but I'll speak for me. There is nothing sexier in this world than a wife who wants her husband sexually. That is just the upper echelon of my wife is hot because she desires me sexually. And so it's important, whether you're the man or woman, both of you need to be initiating. And if that's something you struggle with, we go back to scheduling sex. That's a healthy thing. You just know, hey, Tuesday night, here we go. And so that's a healthy thing, but nobody wants to beg.
And I feel for the women out there that are initiating, that are letting their husbands know they're interested, and they still have no desire. Then it's going to fall back to one of these other reasons that we've mentioned above.
Hang in there, all right? And hopefully they'll see a doctor.
Hopefully they will, come clean, and you can get to the bottom of it, and you can, see a doctor, get some counseling, whatever it is to be able to fix this issue, because it should be mutual in marriage. There shouldn't be one spouse that's frustrated about things. Yeah.
Number 10, the last one here that can cause a sexless marriage, and that's co-sleeping with children.
This is a toughie. And we had kiddos that would always, every one of our 4 boys at one time or another in their little lives would come climb in bed with us all the time. And it's tough. And
go put them back to bed.
Yeah.
Lay down by them.
Yeah. If you can at least start with them in their own beds.
If they show up at 3 o'clock in the morning because they had a bad dream, that's one thing. But if your kids are going to bed with you every night in your bed at 9 o'clock, that's not the healthiest
No.
thing.
And we've had couples come up to us in our workshops that say, that's just how we get them to sleep. They climb in our bed, we go to sleep, and it's like, ugh. We would go lay down by our kids in their bed. They wanted somebody in there with them, but we would go lay down next to them in their bed until they fell asleep. I can remember doing that
Many nights.
many nights with every one of ours. And I know when you're tired, a lot of times you fall asleep too. And Trey would do that. He'd fall asleep, and I'd be the one that'd have to go wake him up and say, okay, come get in our bed now.
I would go put them to sleep, and they would put me to sleep.
That's right.
Yeah.
A lot of times he would go to sleep before the kids. But yeah, it's just such a bad habit to get into, to just let them climb in bed with you to go to sleep. It really is.
Protect that intimacy in your bedroom. That's a healthy place, your bedroom is, and protect that place and put a lock on your bedroom door. And
That's right.
Don't let your kids sleep in your bed with you all the time.
But like you said, if they're having a nightmare, they need to know, they can come to mom and dad
Absolutely.
in the middle of the night. Don't leave the door locked all night long.
Yep.
But yeah, it needs to be a place of just for the two of you, a sanctuary for the two of you.
That is right. We got a question of the day. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
All right. We had a question come in today. I thought we'd mention it here. And it said, what can a spouse use in the way of their phone to flirt with their husband? Actually, it was a lady that asked, and what apps are available out there to message your spouse in the way of flirting with your husband or something? And I would say text messages would work. If you're worried about people seeing those, you could delete that afterwards. Make sure you're sending it to the right person. But a text message app, you can use a little video that disappears. Every Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook all have that option to where you can send a little flirty video if that's what you wanted to do, and it would disappear and couldn't be saved or seen by anybody else. And so there are probably a lot of apps available out there that you could use for flirting with your spouse, and the phone's a good way to do it. It's a good way to do it. So
It is, and
yeah.
I think you can send flirty text messages just with words and with not.
Emojis.
Yeah, I think you can do that without having to use special apps and being worried that things are going to disappear. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
You'd probably like for me to send you things that need to be deleted every once in a while.
Yeah, I won't say it out loud. Maybe I have a couple of those I saved, but no. The flirting with your phones is a good healthy thing, and send your spouse a flirty text or a fun
we've
text.
mentioned this before, that a fun thing you can do is just lay something sheer and lacy out on the bed and say, take a picture of that and send that to your husband and say, this is what I'm going to be wearing later tonight. That's a pretty good way to flirt.
Good hint.
Without being,
And he'll
worried that
he'll
somebody
come
else
home
is
early.
going to see that.
Yes, he'll come home early and
He
he'll be in a
will.
good mood.
He will.
And all that kind of good
Yes.
stuff. So we hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. We've enjoyed hanging out with you, and we appreciate the time that you give to listen. And we pray that it has blessed you. We always try to keep our marriages in our prayers. And if you've got a special prayer request, don't hesitate to ever message us, and we will sure do our best to pray for you. Y'all have a great day, and many, many blessings to you guys. Thanks for joining us.
See you next week.